everyone, this is Amanda Borchel-Dan.
And I'm Jessica Steinberg,
your host for Times Will Tell,
a weekly podcast from the Times of Israel. Hi, and welcome to this week's Times Will Tell. It's Jessica Steinberg, and I'm here this week at OCD, recently named Israel's best restaurant at the Israel Kitchen Awards. And it's named for the acronym for obsessive compulsive disorder because it refers to the very meticulous care that the culinary team here pour into each dish of the nightly tasting menu. I'm speaking with Shalom Simcha Elbert, the Jerusalem-born and raised Italian-trained chef who found his way to fermentation. He's now the head of R&D at the Jaffa-based OCD, which prides itself on being a zero-waste restaurant led by Chef Raz Rahav. By the way, you will have to wait until April to get a reservation here, and guests can inform the restaurant of any kind of dietary restriction. So note that for yourselves. Okay, so I am here, top of the morning, with Shalom Simcha at OCD. No one else is here.
Correct.
And we are sitting around the bar, the empty bar seating at OCD, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you came to this role that you have of head of R&D. I know that you mentioned to me beforehand that you found your way when you were 15 years old and fried a batch of schnitzel for yourself and for your classmates. Tell us a little bit about what was happening at that point in your life.
So good morning. So basically I was at high school. I was studying in a dorm. And for Saturday, I was there for Shabbat, and the food was terrible. So I decided to try making schnitzel. It was the most basic thing that I knew how to make, and I thought that it was a good idea. And it was the first time in my life that I had something that was reciprocatory, that I got a good feedback in. And it was something that people wanted something from me that I had to give. And it clicked within that time period how powerful food can be. That it brings people around the table, that it's more than just a physical feeding, but an actual understanding about what a strong sociological tool food can be. Mm-hmm. And then from there, it just never stopped.
Right, but you were only 15.
I was 15.
You had a while to go before you could. I don't know. Yeah. Did you break out early from?
No. So actually, not at all. But it fascinated me. From that time, I started reading books and watching TV shows and reading magazines and cookbooks. And I was eating kosher at the time, so I was also still fascinated about food that wasn't kosher.
Out there,
yeah.
Right.
And I was in an internal dilemma of how I was going to do it and what was going to be. And I was
not the first person to deal with that issue.
I'm sure. And I was actually talking to my rabbi a lot, Rav Steinsaltz, and he told me always that that's the challenge. That would be my challenge in life. Obviously I chose not to take it as a challenge, but that's also part of why I've left being religious, was because I felt that it was holding me back. And it was just something that led me throughout all of high school. I wouldn't learn. I would read books, cookbooks. I wouldn't go to class, and I would just try and cook for my friends and try new things.
What did trying new things mean at that point in your life?
I mean, it wasn't anything sophisticated, obviously.
No, but what was it?
But I mean, if you take in the morning you eat a grilled cheese, then starting to make it a little bit more finesse and a little bit more fine, and then using different breads and different sauces and different cheeses and learning about it. And I was very, very, everything was self-taught. So it wasn't anything that gourmet, and I'm laughing looking back at it now.
Sure. I can imagine that white bread that you were using for the most part.
Of course. But then, suddenly you go into sourdough and you're like, wait, what is sourdough? And then you learn about bread, and that's actually where I started fermentation with.
It was bread. Yeah, that makes sense.
Bread was the first thing that I fermented.
You were fermenting in your high school dorm?
That wasn't in high school. That was after high school. Before I went into the army. I started making bread, sourdough, and it just fascinated me.
And this is before the craze that has happened in the last bunch of years.
Exactly. Which actually I wrote my thesis about. I wrote my thesis about why people start baking during times of crisis and why during COVID, sourdough took such an uprise.
Oh, okay. I want to hear more about that.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Wait. Well, let's stick with the timeline for the moment. Okay, but then you did the army. You went to the army.
Went to the military. I had nothing to do with food there, even though in the middle I was thinking about going and trying to be a cook for a base.
In the army.
Yeah, for an army base. Also just to learn logistics, because I think people don't understand the importance about how much logistics goes into restaurants and cooking. And that was at the time I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to be a cook. And I wanted to learn what it was like to feed 5,000 people a day.
Which the Army offers that opportunity.
Yeah. And
But did that happen?
It didn't work out, which was a shame because I think there's a lot to learn. It doesn't matter the food that was actually, obviously it's important that it tastes good and that it's healthy and et cetera, et cetera. But I think the logistics behind it are incredible. And it's really something that as somebody who wanted to open a restaurant at the time, really wanted to learn and study about. I got out of the Army and then I went traveling, very food oriented. I went from the Galapagos Islands all the way up to California. I had a little Kube business where I funded actually my trip with
Impressive.
that. Yeah. We would sell Kube in Jerusalem and it was just a lot of fun. And then I realized that kitchens are just a little bit too small in the impact that they can have. You feed, even in big restaurants, you feed 150 people in the evening.
Right.
That's not a lot of people in a month.
Right. To affect in terms
to have a real effect on food and education and what the world is going through and agriculture.
Meaning you don't want to just give people a meal and send them off. You wanted
correct.
some other kind of longer term effect.
I felt that really, again, I'll say it again. Food is a sociological tool that I felt that I can impact through it and with it a lot of people and do something that's also good and educate and change something, make a change within the food system, which is very, 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 very broken.
Okay.
And then I was looking for schools or for something to do.
Right.
And I found this amazing university, which feels like Hogwarts.
Yeah.
And as something that somebody went into my brain and picked it and basically just built a university around what interested me.
Okay. Tell us where and what.
The University of Gastronomic Sciences in Bra, Italy, in Piedmont.
Not shocking that it would be in Italy, but
Of course.
Okay.
It's where the slow food movement was born. And the founder of slow food also founded the university, Carlo Petrini.
Okay. How's your Italian?
I'm fluent.
Now.
No,
But then.
I went without knowing a word of Italian.
Wow.
And the first year is all in English, and then the second and third year are in Italian.
So you got to pick up Italian in your first year in
but
preparation.
it's a difference between picking up Italian and speaking like a third grader than studying academic Italian.
I would imagine.
Which was probably the biggest challenge, but also one of the biggest gifts.
Is there sort of like an ulpan for studying Italian?
You have 6 months of
Intensive.
classes. No, not intensive.
No.
Once a week.
So you just had to really
So what I
work it.
did was I immersed myself in my Italian friends. I really just made sure that they only spoke Italian, and I just
No
listened.
English, no practicing their English
No
on you.
English, and even if the evening started off in English, then they would quickly go to Italian, especially once wine was flowing and the conversation and different cultural references that you don't understand, and they could only explain in Italian. And I immersed myself in with my Italian friends. In the first 6 months, I would just sit there and not understand anything.
And slowly.
And then during summer break, instead of coming back to Israel or traveling, I went and I did an internship on a farm. And that really changed everything.
So that's what brought you into fermentation, or not necessarily?
No, that actually, I was always fascinated with butchering and charcuterie.
Butchering. Oh, yes, that's right.
And I worked as I don't have a better word than...
Tell us the Italian word just so we can hear it.
Macellaio.
Okay, yes.
Which is a butcher, but also somebody who slaughters the animals.
So you're in the process from the beginning.
So there's a good friend of mine. She has a farm on Rimini, which is in the east of Italy, northern Italy. And they grow in a biodynamic type of agriculture. They grow all their animals, which goes from chicken, pheasants, ducks, pigs, rabbits, goats, sheep.
Wow.
All of those.
The whole menagerie.
Everything. And they roam wildly in the farm. And they have a 60-acre farm. And they just roam there widely, but then everything is slaughtered on site and butchered on site, and everything is very farm to table, 0 kilometer. And the butcher there has never left his city. He doesn't speak a word of English.
And you were at his side.
And for 2 months, that's what was it.
Was it harkening back to your religious roots? Was there, at that point, was it just, understood that this is where you were heading? Was it bizarre to be handling certain animals that you knew from your religious studies that this was not something you would have touched way back when?
I think it was, I mean, my father was a shochet.
A religiously trained slaughterer. Yes.
Yeah. In the former Soviet Union.
Uh-huh.
So
wow.
Yeah.
So there's
a bit of a
connection.
background. There's a connection for sure. I thought it would be a lot harder,
but it wasn't.
But it wasn't, and I think it gave me an understanding of where my meat comes from and what it means to slaughter and what it means to take a life's animal's
and to
life,
really know
and
every
to be there,
part,
and to know every part and to use and really do nose to tail and to understand the anatomy of animals and what you can do with it and different temperatures and aging, and it was really fascinating and amazing. But it takes a toll to take an animal's life. It was like the first large animal that I it's a funny word that I slaughtered. It was
what's the word in Italian for slaughter?
Ammacciato. Ammacciato
So
is
related
like to kill. Yeah, but it was intense. It was intense. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now you did that for how many summers? Or
I did that for 2 months
for
in the
2
summer,
months,
but
and-
intensive. So by the end of it, I was speaking more Italian than I remembered English.
Well, that's a way to learn Italian.
And I mean, I was fully immersed in an Italian environment.
So now you were in your second year
Yeah.
of school. Okay.
And I was fermenting throughout the whole entire time. And the NOMA Guide to Fermentation just came out, and fermentation took off in the world.
Right.
Well, the record of fermentation, people recording how they were fermenting,
How they were doing it, but
'Cause
what were
fermenting-
you fermenting? For,
I mean,
for example?
from bread to pickles to
Everything
vinegars
you
to
had your hand
kombuchas.
on.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
And it's just, I think
Seasonal. In other words, like
Of
what was
course,
coming across
of
your
course.
table.
In Italy, you really don't have an option other than seasonal,
Right.
because you go to the markets and you won't
That's all
have a
there is.
tomato in the winter. You just won't.
So tell us a little bit about fermentation, because sometimes our audience, they might be familiar, but they might not be. Just to give us a sense of what fermentation is as we go forward.
So fermentation is a microbial process that takes, I like to consider it as taking one ingredient and turning it into another. So grapes, taking it and turning it into wine, flour and water, turning it into bread, through microbial interaction. Basically bacteria, yeast, mold, fungi, all of that family are basically feeding off of what we give them and turning it through their digestive system into something that we enjoy a lot. It's very funny to look at it like that.
It's amazing to think about it that way.
But I mean, we're usually not familiar with how much fermentation we have in our life or how much we're dependent on fermentation. I mean, we're fermented.
Nice.
Because
We're fermented, yes.
Our bacteria and our microbial biome and in our body and everything that's going on is bacteria that's working and helping us and making sure that we're healthy and that our gut is healthy and we're dependent on it. And it's very, very, very sad to see how we're trying to avoid bacteria because it has a negative association,
Right.
even though it's a critical part of our life. I mean,
Right.
If fermentation or bacteria wouldn't happen, then we couldn't have coffee in the morning. Coffee has to go through fermentation. Cacao has to go through fermentation. Wine has to go through fermentation. Beer, bread. And these are just the basics. So going down that rabbit hole, which is a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It fascinated me
from the get-go. From there you were
from doing bread when I was 18 or 19 years old. I just understood there was something amazing to me to see. I took flour and water and I mixed it together, and the next day it doubled itself. And it was just something that I hadn't added any yeast or anything. It was just out in the open, and there was magic happening. And it teaches you a lot about also processes and learning what time is. And time is a crucial ingredient within fermentation. You have to be very, very, very patient, which nowadays is very hard.
I have learned that through my own sourdough process that I'm in the midst of. And my spelt sourdough fell very flat yesterday.
It can happen. Yeah, spelt
Still
doesn't
tastes
really.
good, though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's also the beauty about bread. Bread usually always tastes good, no matter what.
Yes. So, okay. So bring us back to where you were going to go with this. So you're, of course, you're exploring all the time in your own kitchen, I
Right.
imagine, at that point.
And after my first summer, I went to volunteer at MAD in Copenhagen, which is a symposium through the NOMA group. And it was actually, sadly, the last MAD that wasn't because of COVID.
Because what year are we in at this point?
This is 2018. And I went to MAD, and I was fascinated with what was going on in NOMA and how they were organizing this event. And the volunteers that I met there were just incredible. And I had the privilege of meeting David Zilber, who was the head of fermentation at the time at NOMA. I brought him to our university to come and teach. He actually came not once, but he came one time. It was a lecture for the whole entire university. It was the whole university stopped classes.
Everyone came.
And everybody came. The biggest hall was packed. It was
Wow.
really an amazing, it's a 3-hour lecture, which was incredible. And then the next year he came and he gave a course to a master class, which was it was an amazing thing to see how somebody saw the value of teaching and not only being in a restaurant and educating and really teaching what he believed in.
Where did that put you then? What?
I was always fascinated. I really wanted to go work for David. David he's really is a genius. He's somebody that I find fascinating and artistic and mindful and really just out there. He's always thinking in different ways and in different...
Really pushing the envelope on this whole area.
For sure. And he always outspoke also being better in the kitchen and why kitchens are flawed and what's going on and how he wanted to be better and how he thought the system could be better. And I was not planning on coming back to Israel. I was planning on going to Copenhagen and staying there for at least a few years. And
Right. I see. And the pandemic really interrupted that.
And then I came here for a visit to Israel.
Came to visit the friends and family.
In July 2020. The sous chef of OCD reached out to me and wanted to start fermenting.
So then you come back to Israel sort of unexpectedly before you really had planned to, in a sense.
Right.
And OCD, and you're saying...
And I was already consulting OCD. It wasn't really consulting. It was just helping them get the right equipment, start fermenting, if they had questions, books.
Back up for a second, Shalom. Tell us, we spoke a little bit in the intro about what OCD is and how it just actually won Best Restaurant in Israel. But what are the concepts behind OCD?
OCD opened 8 years ago by Chef Raz Rahav, Raz and Idan Blumenthal. They opened the restaurant with a concept of having, at the time, 18 people around the bar, getting the same food at the same time, a closed menu, seasonal that changed every 3 to 4 months, and to kind of bring that type of cuisine to Israel. 8 years later, the restaurant
now 23 seats.
23 seats after our renovation that we just did in October, November. The restaurant is still giving the same menu to everybody, but with a different ideology that's been developed in the past 2 years since I've joined, and we've kind of put together our minds and understood the responsibility that we have. Raz and Erez and Idan opened with the knowledge that food is a medium as well. And it's a medium to educate. It's a medium to speak. It's a medium to talk about what's going on in the world. Because the beauty of the restaurant is that the cooks are the people who also obviously cook, but they also serve the dishes.
Right. We're sitting here, just listeners, just so you know, it's an open bar. A U-shaped almost. Right. It's an open bar system, essentially. The kitchen is right across from the bar seating, so you are looking and speaking and watching everything as it happens.
Exactly.
Let's take a quick break. When we're back, Shalom will tell us how they build the constantly changing menu at OCD and offer us a little tasting. Okay, so now you've been at OCD for how long?
For 2 years.
Okay. But you've got a vision.
Yeah. We basically understood that when Raz and his sous chef were starting to ferment, we understood that we wanted to build a pantry. Mm-hmm. And then it was during COVID and it was lockdown, and we had a lot of time to sit and talk and play. And then we understood that because of the profile that OCD has, or because of the type of menus that we serve, everybody gets the same food. So if we serve a piece of filet fish, a fish fillet, everybody is going to get the center. So we have a lot of trimmings and a lot of waste.
Right.
And that waste is good.
Yeah.
And through fermentation processes, we can use it for next menus and build ourselves a pantry. And then it started clicking. So since July 2021, we're a zero waste restaurant. We've
zero.
I mean, I'll say 98%.
Pretty close.
But we strive to be 0-0. There's no such thing, I believe, as really completely 100%, because you're always gonna, first of all, when you taste and something doesn't come out good, or and it's rotten or something, you can't. There's not much you can do about it. That's the nature of
a kitchen.
But
anyway.
Right now we're trying to find a compost, and to see how we can work together with somebody who can use compost for that. But yeah, we've moved for an almost zero waste restaurant, where we use all of the products to create, through fermentation processes, our pantry for the next menus. But that goes further, and we also work with our producers and our farmers that get stuck with different produce that they can't sell.
So you end up changing the menu based on what?
Yeah. So let's say we talk to our farmers and we say, okay, suddenly a farmer can come up to me and say, listen, there were just crazy winds, and 600 kilo of green apricots that haven't even ripened are on the floor. And nobody's going to take 600 kilo.
No one's going to use those.
And at the time we bought, I think, almost 450
What'd you do with them?
We had a whole dish just about apricots. We had 4 different types of bread with apricots. It was the bread serving here. And we fermented, we cured, we made hot sauce. We
did had a lot of things
different processes.
Yeah.
Which aren't as interesting as just bring the conversation to the table. Because
so what happens then? So then you've got the apricot bread, and you got your customers. Yeah.
And we tell the story about what's going on. Right now on the menu, we have a dish that's homage to. There was a crisis with Israeli garlic, and it almost went extinct this year.
Right.
And we bought at the time 100 kilo of Israeli garlic, which is a lot of garlic.
Yeah.
And we buy it almost once a month. And what we do with it is we have a dish only surrounding it, because we want to tell the story.
You want to put the focus on it.
Exactly. And we tell the story. We don't even tell the customers what's happening on the plate, but we tell them about why it's important and what we did with it. And trying to, because people don't know what's going on.
So how do people react? Mixed?
Some people, I mean, we were really scared that people are also going to be like, why are you serving me waste?
Right. Not everyone thinks about it
but
the
then
same
they
way.
taste it, or they understand that it's not just waste, but it's a process.
Because they're not coming here because of your zero waste kitchen.
No.
They're coming because you're the hot restaurant.
Right.
And serve great food.
We
have
hope
won
so.
awards.
We try. So they're very reciprocative and understanding, and they follow up and they ask a lot of questions as well.
So but then what happens for you? You've made this really your calling, in a sense. What happens for you going forward?
So right now we just we launched products, a line of products under the name of Tene. Tene means basket in Hebrew.
There's a farm, the Tene farm.
It's a very common name.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a basket or a pantry that we believe that these products can also, or should be, in people's homes. To make them better cooks without having to change what they're doing. So bringing OCD to people's homes.
Right.
So let's say if you're cooking bolognese, ragu at home, and you're doing the same exact thing, but if you add a spoonful of our miso, it's going to change and make it even better.
Richer, deeper,
more umami. You're going to caramelize it more. You're going to have everything. Or if you're going to use our soy sauce and you taste it versus store-bought soy sauce, you're going to taste the difference and you're not going to want to use store-bought soy sauce.
Is there anything specifically Israeli or Tel Avivi about OCD and about what you're doing? Yes. So the apricots fell. They didn't get enough. The wind brought them down onto the floor of the orchard, and you used them. But I'm wondering, do you see anything Israeli, or is this essentially just a global movement that you are bringing to this particular spot?
That's a good question. I think it's happening in the world, and I think in Israel, it's up and coming. I believe that this is the next trend in the food world. I see cooks in restaurants, and first of all, I'm going to be completely honest. Talking about our pocket, restaurateurs and restaurants, every gram of every product is important. And we feel it, and we're privileged enough to know how many customers are going to come and to order the exact amount. But what happens if you're a restaurant that you order for 80 people in the evening
and you don't serve
30 people only come?
Right.
So I think that's going to be the next trend. I don't
just in terms of the bottom line, just in terms of revenue.
I think people see it from the bottom line, and then they understand the value that it also has, which in my opinion is just as important. I don't think that it's something that Israeli yet. I don't see.
It might just be in terms of what the produce is.
Right.
Right.
I mean, we're making it Israeli because we're here in Israel.
Sure.
We believe that we can really have an effect and bring it also to the world.
Yeah.
But we're trying to educate.
Yeah.
If that's not too big of a word. And yeah, I think we see where the world is going to. And sustainability is running
right.
a lot of companies and a lot of restaurants, and we understand the importance of it.
So now we're in the kitchen.
Yep.
And Shalom has 369 little, very delectable looking ceramic bowls with things that are in them, and he's going to tell us what they are.
So this is just a little bit of what the process is that we do here. 8 out of 9 of these products are from waste. The 9th one is just.
Am I supposed to guess?
Yeah, you can guess.
Tell us, finish your thought.
The 9th one is just something that people love and really, really adore. So it's also one of the products that we sell.
Okay.
But all of these products are on the menu. No. It's on the menu, but that's not the product.
That's not the product. Okay.
I'll go around.
Yeah.
So this is what we call it's magic powder. So it's different. After we strain our soy sauces and our garums and our different vegetables the trimmings, we dehydrate it and we dry it out.
Wow.
And basically, it's a umami powder. This is vinegar made out of celery. So we had.
It has a really green. It has the greenish tint.
So last year we had a dish where we only used the leaves, and we had 9 kilos a day of celery.
So the stalks.
Just the stalks, and we had nothing to do with them.
Right.
And that's a balance about also because part
meaning
of my
you
job
weren't going to say I'm going to make something with the stalks.
The restaurant. Yeah.
Yes, in the restaurant.
For the menu.
Got it.
I mean, that's also closing the loop. Part of my job here is also designing the menus. Part of R&D with Raz. So I also know when I build a dish, I know what's going to be at the end of it and the waste and what I can start making for the next menu. So when we plan, I'm planning a year ahead.
Wow. Knowing the seasons,
exactly.
knowing the produce,
knowing the waste, and then what I can make from that waste.
Okay, got it.
So this is celery vinegar.
Okay.
This is we use a lot of limes and lemons in our restaurant. Obviously, after we grate them and we juice them, all the peels that usually been thrown away, we blacken them like black garlic.
Okay. This is a dehydrator.
So we keep it at 60 degrees.
Okay.
And basically it's become black lime, black lemon.
So
it's like Persian lemon.
Like Persian lime. Okay.
But
lemon.
it's made out of lime, and we had a dish
smelling it.
so you can really smell it. It smells like Sprite.
It smells like Sprite. It does, and it has this very dark brownish tint to it.
And it's one of the most amazing ingredients that we've created here.
Okay.
When we opened our bakery last year, we had a lot of tests, and we had a lot of bread that wasn't good enough. We were testing
your
the oven out,
right,
and the correct recipe, and so we made a bread miso, which is now being baked back into the bread.
Wow.
So closing the loop.
I'm just saying it's a very
very, very dark.
Very dark brown, also very rich looking.
This is 9 months old miso. And it's closing the loop. So like we didn't throw away any bread.
So you're saying crusts of bread.
The whole entire bread.
The whole bread.
The whole bread.
Is then made into this
and
miso.
made into a miso, yeah.
Wow.
So we don't throw anything.
Because miso, of course, is
Miso
fermented.
is a fermented paste that comes from Japan.
Right.
Basically, it's usually made out of soybeans or chickpeas.
But why not make it out of bread?
So that's what really has been going on in the past years, in using the ancient techniques into modern cuisine and understanding that there are no limits, and that you can do whatever you want.
Clearly.
So we have it on. We had it in our menu last menu in the summer. We had a dessert made out of bread miso. So a dessert only made out of bread and bread miso. So it was a soy sauce that was made out of. It's not a soy sauce. It's a
soy
it's a process of making soy sauce, but only with bread.
Right.
So there's no soy in it, so it's not soy sauce,
right.
but it's a bread sauce.
Got it.
And bread miso.
But it's soy-like sauce.
Exactly. It tastes like soy sauce. The
right.
deep
but it just has
color,
no soy.
but there's no soy in it.
Fascinating.
This is actually
This looks like it looks like a chili-ish sauce.
So this is a soy
it?
sauce made out of dates.
Soy sauce made out of dates, but more orangey in tone.
Yeah, because it's actually pretty young. It's only a month old.
So it'll get a little darker as it ages.
Exactly. The longer it ages, basically what happens is very, 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 very slowly over time it caramelizes. So if what happens when we put a hot pan and we take meat and we put it on a hot pan, caramelizes very quickly because it's high temperature and very quick.
Okay.
What we're doing here is very low temperature but very slow. So it just takes a lot longer, but it's gonna.
But then your flavors are richer, I imagine.
Yes.
Often.
Okay. This is we have on the menu right now almond milk that we cook fish in the almond milk, and then we have a lot of leftovers of almonds. And with the garlic that I was telling you about before, we made an almond garlic miso, which is like a scoldelia.
Wow. And it's I would say it's like a burnt umber in color and shade.
So it's also a paste,
chunkier looking.
It's a chunky because like we just use the almonds, and I usually grind it up afterwards.
Wow. Now this looks like soy sauce.
So it's actually not. It's a gastrique, which is a sauce made out of vinegar and caramel. Okay. This is a blackberry vinegar.
Right, because it is very deep.
Very, very deep.
Deep wine color, really. Yeah. And thicker than soy sauce.
Yes. And this is olive oil jam, which I was telling you about, which is not made out of waste.
It's beautiful. Looks like an egg yolk.
Yeah. People love it. It's quite delicious.
Yeah.
And here's Raz.
Hi. Shalom. Nemod. Want to say hi to us?
Hi. And this is our soy sauce.
That is your soy sauce, which is golden in color.
Yes, because it's made out of buckwheat. Because both Raz and I, we come from Eastern European background.
Kasha popcorn. Exactly. I just wrote about that.
Right.
Okay.
So we made it out of buckwheat and freaky.
But did you like buckwheat as a kid?
I mean, my dad made it when he made it, not just buckwheat. It was fine.
I didn't love it.
But now we really love buckwheat.
You do fun
we have a
things
miso buckwheat, and we have right now on the menu we have a dessert that's made out of buckwheat.
You're not making kasha varnish guests with bow tie.
No. We're not.
God forbid.
But we'll probably we always have a lot of part of our kitchen is being a little bit chutzpah.
Okay. Like kasha popcorn.
Like kasha popcorn, or we wanted to make on our menu right now. We wanted to take on gefilte fish, made out of shrimp.
Crazy.
It didn't go on the menu. We want to push where we came from and what we know to the limit because we think that that's what Israeli food is.
Aha. So that actually goes back to the earlier question.
Yeah.
Then. Then what is Israeli food at OCD?
there's a great sentence that we say that not everything that is local is Israeli, and not everything that Israeli is local.
So it's like sort of Israeli cuisine 2.4.
I don't know
something.
because I think it's all still in the making. It's still doesn't have a shape yet. And we're also learning what we
No, but if you're thinking about making gefilte fish out of shrimp, or if you're
we're trying to have no limits.
Right.
But we're also seeing that if both of us grew in Israel, and Raz's grandmother lived in Israel, and his mother lived in Israel, and
your dad was
my
Russian.
dad is Russian, but we both had kasha or buckwheat in Israel. Why is that not Israeli? Why is just Moroccan fish Israeli? Like how is this not part of the culinary scene? Because who said so?
Right.
So what we grew up on, or what Ashkenazi food, or it doesn't even matter if it's Ashkenazi, but things that we have from home that we grew up in Israel, why aren't they part of the cuisine?
Right. So how much arguing or discussion is there around those menus that you change every few months?
We talk about and we work a lot. I mean, the moment.
That's just the sound of the saran wrap roll falling.
I'm sorry. Basically, when we change a menu, so it's a week later, I'm already working on the next menu.
Wow.
But I already have.
But it only took you. How long does it take you to make the menu?
It takes 4 months to create a menu.
So it does take 4 months.
It takes 4 months, but you also start a year ago, because I know that next year I'm going to have this miso paste.
Yeah, the almond garlic.
Exactly.
Miso.
That is going to be ready.
To put into the dishes for that menu.
Even though it's on the menu as well now, but in a different shape. But yeah,
and form.
And it takes a lot of time, and because of my job that we were trying to push Tene to be in the forefront.
Right.
So it's a balance of building the menu, talking about what we're trying to speak with the menu and to give through, and also creating actual dishes that taste good, because if it doesn't taste good, it's obviously not.
And how much are you influenced by your colleagues around you, the restaurants around you, the food around you?
I mean, it's an amazing scene what's going on in Israel, and now to see what's happening, and I think it's really like the forest right after it rains and looking for mushrooms. Like, that's what I feel the culinary scene is going on right now. It's just like it's very, very, very alive, and it's very vibrant, and I think everybody in their own way, every chef and every restaurant is taking their own direction into developing what Israeli cuisine is. And we don't know, and we don't have it yet. I feel like it's not a full, we can't say this is Israeli cuisine yet, because also 75 years is
not that long.
Very, 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 very
when
young.
You come from Italy. Yeah,
I mean, like, and I think that's the beauty also. Like, if I would be in Italy right now, my possibility of changing the culture would be zero, because
it's been there for so long.
It's been there for years, and who am I to ever come and talk about
what you're doing
type of
here?
Pasta? Who am I?
But what about this?
But this,
the fermentation
is a way that, like, we have the possibility to create what Israeli cuisine is, or try to recreate what Israeli cuisine is, and doing it in also a way that's responsible and giving added value to cooks, to farmers, to people. So it's and here we just got our fish for the day.
Heads and tails.
So we have
and what's in the middle?
Exactly. So I think that's what we're trying to do here, is to really give also our cooks the responsibility, and for them the understanding of what it means to be a new cook, to think about not only the plate but what comes beforehand and after exactly. And to think already, I mean, obviously nobody's going to work here forever, and I want cooks who leave here to bring this mentality to other places. I want them to go and build their own dishes or restaurants and have it in their DNA, to really, because that's how you create change. That not only if I do it, but if other people do it, and if they're going to build dishes around their waste,
then you've done it.
Then I don't know if I've done it, but
You're on the way to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll be very happy to see that.
Shalom, it has been a pleasure to hear about what you're doing here.
Thank you so much.
Okay, listeners, you'll be hearing from us again soon. In the meantime, we thank you for being with us and happy listening.
Thanks so much for listening to Times Will Tell from the Times of Israel, and thanks to our producer, Gilad Brownstein.
Please subscribe wherever you find your podcast and check out our daily briefing news show every Sunday through Thursday.
Like what you hear? Consider rating us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to spread the word.
Until next week.
Shalom.